my choices for the best music of this year. So before I close it out with Stephen Price's great work in Gravity that closed out the film, I do want to take this opportunity to just kind of address this year, talk about 2013, since this will be my last show of 2013. If you followed along with this show, this has been a very difficult year in a lot of ways for me, but it's also been a very rewarding year at the same time. And in a lot of ways, I'm very happy to just put this year behind me and get into 2014, which I hope is going to be a year of really great promise. But when I think back through this year, especially with where at the beginning of the year, I had no idea that I would have done what I had done this year. With the documentary that came along, that took me from traveling. I mean, in the course of 1 year, I went to the top of the Willis Tower in Chicago for the first time. I drove over multiple times the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco for the first time. I went back to New York. Never thought I'd be back up in there. I was driving up through very snowy Buffalo, New York. I was very close to the Canada border, very close to Niagara Falls. I went to Boulder, Colorado for the first time. Went up to Madison, Wisconsin. Actually drove up there for the first, I added some new states to my first time visits, visited, and basically some were drive-throughs, I'll admit, like drove through Ohio and Pennsylvania for the first time, went to New Jersey for the first time ever. Losing my job obviously was a huge loss. And a very, very difficult thing that happened in October. I've been unemployed now for about 3 months. Not a position that I'm used to being in for sure. But it was that loss of my job that actually, strangely enough, allowed me all the time to focus on this new documentary, which I'm actually about to wrap up the filming for, and I've actually done the first editing. I've actually got about 50 seconds of the documentary put together. It will be a feature-length documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months, a position to being in. But was that the loss of that actually enough allowed me time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited about 50 of the put together. It will be a documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months, a position to being in. But is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this story, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited about 50 of the documents put together. It will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months, a position to being in. But is that loss of that actually enough allowed time focus on this story, which I'm to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited about 50 new documents of the new document put together. New document will be a feature new documentary, new document, and a new document, very difficult new document things, new document in October, new document. I've not employed now, not about 3 months, not a position, not to being in, not is that not the loss of lose that actually obviously enough allowed lose time obvious focus on this lose which I'm obvious to wrap up losing for obvious and I've actually first edited obvious at about 50 visited of the visited put together visited will be a feature visited documentary visited and a visited very difficult visited thing visited in October visited I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in. But was that the loss of that actually enough allowed time focus on this which I'm to wrap up for and I've actually first edited at about 50 over both of the over both put together over both will be a feature over both documentary over both and over both very difficult over both thing over both in October over both documentary that I've documentary that employed now documentary that about 3 months documentary that a position documentary that to being in documentary that documentary is that documentary the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm able to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that the loss of that actually enough allowed time to focus on this documentary, which I'm about to wrap up for, and I've actually first edited at about 50 of the put together. Will be a feature documentary, and a very difficult thing in October. I've employed now about 3 months a position to being in, but is that my short film I did want to submit to my hometown film festival, the Sidewalk Film Festival here in Birmingham, and it did get accepted in this year's festival. So it was nice to have that experience to come back as a returning filmmaker because I had After the Torment play at Sidewalk in 2011. So to be able to go from like that summer experience of having a Sidewalk Film Festival for one film and then go to South Dakota for another film, I'd never had that experience before. I mean, to have multiple films playing in different festivals in 1 year, I mean, that was a remarkable experience. So, I mean, and just on a personal side, my daughter started high school. She's already practicing driving, it's I don't know. I don't know what I can say about this year. So, I mean, thankfully I can look at 2013 in a very positive way because of all those things that I just said. And by the end of this year, where I'm feeling as a person that I have really changed in so many ways. I feel much better as a person, and I just feel it's hard for me to describe the feeling of, I've always doubted that I didn't take the bold steps when I was in my 20s, to really become a filmmaker. I could have made the bold choice to go off to California at the time, but instead I moved down south, and because my parents always taught me to be realistic, which I thank them for. I really do. I thank them for that I taught myself computer programming, and I went into the corporate world, and was very successful at that. But now it's like I'm being given this opportunity to really do what drives me, the passion with filmmaking. And, in a lot of ways, it's an opportunity that I didn't necessarily think that I would get. And to be able to have that opportunity now is just it's very moving to me. It's very, it's just I hope I don't fuck it up. It's like, but just being in that, it's hard for me to describe because I'm in my early 40s now, but now I feel so much more competent as a filmmaker. I feel so much more confident in so many ways, because I just every time that I went to interview people for this documentary, I was like I know it's kind of a cliched moment, but I mean in For Love of the Game, that movie with Kevin Costner. Remember, if you saw it, I know a lot of people don't like the film. I thought it was a pretty good film, actually, and another good musical score, by the way. When, I loved how they showed his ability when he would be on that pitcher's mound and he would throw the ball, he would be in this zone. Everything just zoned out, And I think when you do what you love and that it's your passion and that this is what you were kind of born to do, that's how I felt. When I turned on that camera, even if I didn't fully prepare my interview questions in advance, I was in the zone immediately. And I never thought of myself, I've told Jamie Duvall how much of a great interviewer he is, and I've never really felt that was a skill of mine. But I've had so many people tell me how much I put them at ease during these interviews. And maybe I don't do it as well on radio or internet, but maybe I need the camera there. So, it's been, yeah, Dean, I love your words of support, man. About living your life. It's right. It's that's what it feels like, and I don't know exactly what, I'm being unemployed, I'm still having to try to pursue a job, and, but that's another reason why I'm kind of rushing to get this documentary out there, because I do believe it has the potential more than any other film that I've worked on to actually do something that could propel me into this industry, even more than what I've done so far. But anyway, I'm rattling on and on. I could go on forever. But that's how I'm going to remember 2013. It was a year of a lot of dark places, but the overwhelming feeling by the end of it is of just how thankful I am, how thankful I am for sort of this second chance. Thankful that this film kind of came to me in a lot of ways, and I feel it's been a story that I've been destined to kind of make, and I'm just anxious for everybody to see it. I hope I can do it justice. I know there's going to be some frustrating times in the nights ahead as I try to put this together and match the vision in my head now. But it's an absolute challenge that I just adore, and I'm just so looking forward to getting it done. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of good news about it in the weeks ahead. So anyway, thanks to all of you for supporting this show. I know I haven't been able to do this show as much, because of all that's been going on this year. And I have a feeling after this Oscar season is over, this show will also be on a very limited basis during the Oscar off season, because that will be right in the prime time of, promoting this documentary and all of that. But your support has meant the world to me. I mean, all of you, not just who's listening in live tonight, Dean, Ed, Owen, and the guests, but everybody who listens to this show. You guys have been supportive for 8 years on the air, and not just supportive of this show, but just everything that I've been doing as well. And I can't tell you what that has meant to me and the strength that it has given me all through these years, and it continues to drive me. I can't thank you enough. I mean, thank you is not a big enough word. It's not a big enough word, because I believe in all of you. I love all you guys. And our ability to connect via Blog Talk Radio, via Facebook, via everything, when we're all in our distant cities, the way that we can connect through our mutual passions has been just such a great thing. So let's close it out with one of the best pieces of music I've heard all year long. A great way to close out this year as it closed out a remarkable film in Gravity. I hope everybody has a safe New Year's Eve tomorrow night. Party your asses off tomorrow night. And let's welcome in 2014, and let's make it just an outstanding, kick-ass year for all of us, seriously. So let's close it out with one of the most kick-ass pieces of music that came along this year in all of film scores, the ending to the great movie Gravity. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's close it out with Gravity. I'll see you next week.
You know, sometimes you're just not in a place in your life where you're ready for a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do you find this? You know, just
absolutely.
Quiet, safe place to be with another person and not have to worry about all the other stuff, you know.
I mean, I cuddle with my kids, right? But we just don't cuddle as adults anymore.
Although talking to people, I hear people say, I used to cuddle up with people all the time when I was in college and we didn't think anything about it. And I'm like, you need to come to a cuddle party.
I would love to experience all the comforts and discomforts of a cuddle party.
My ex is jealous that I'm going. He said, wow, I can handle you moving on and having sexual relationships with people, but the idea of you going and just cuddling is weirdly threatening.
I really want to see us become less afraid of touch.
And some of my clients would have extremely profound experiences. They would leave crying in tears just from cuddling and talking with a stranger for a little while.
I'm giving them that same sense of comfort that their mother gave them when they were little and they were falling asleep, at nap time.
They say I'm monetizing love and I'm worse than a prostitute because what I'm offering is more intimate than sex.
I'm so happy and proud to say that Madison has a snuggle house.
And it instantly went national right out of the chute. Today's show, it's featuring Lonnie from our snuggle house.
Make eye contact with people on the street, shake their hands, give people hugs.
Can I give you a real hug? Not this stupid little A-frame hug, but a real hug.